So let's start with number 2. Kervin, what do we do? Factors of 5. 1 and 5. So what do we do with that? Are the 1 and 5 positive?
Yes.
And it's equal to 0. Perfect. So our answers here are x is equal to -1 and x is equal to -5. Good job. Okay, let's go to number 3. Layla, what do we do first? Do we add 3 or... Since this 3 is positive, in order to get it to the other side, we have to subtract 3. So our new equation is n squared plus n minus 12 is equal to 0. Remember, in this first section, we need everything to be equal to 0. So now we need 2 factors of -12 that give us a positive 1.
Are you going to post this when we finish? Thank you.
4 and -3. Perfect. So what goes in our parentheses?
N plus 4. And n minus 3.
What do we do next? We make separate equations. So we have n plus 4 is equal to 0 and n minus 3 is equal to 0. And then we just solve for n. So what do we do in the first one? Subtract 4 on both sides. So what do we get for n? And the second one? N is equal to positive 3. Perfect. So we get n is equal to -4 and n is equal to positive 3. Good job. Ready for the next one? Let's go to number 4. Dom, what do we need to do first? Add 3 to both sides. So what's our new equation going to be?
B squared minus 5b plus 4.
Awesome. What do we do next? What's 1 plus 4? 5, but we need it to be -5. So we make them both negative, right? Because -1 plus a -4 is -5. So what goes in our parentheses now? B minus 1 and B minus 4. Awesome. Now what do we do?
B minus 1 equals 0, and then B minus 4 equals 0. And then add 1 and add 4.
So what do we get for B?
B equals plus 1, B equals plus 4.
Perfect. B is equal to 1 and B is equal to 4. All right, number 5. Andrew, what do we do first?
That one is kind of, I didn't know.
Gabi, what do we do? Regalato, what do we do?
Plus 4.
Plus 4. Now what?
A squared plus 9ab plus 20 equals 0. And the factor 20, we get 4 and 5. And it's a plus 4 and a plus 5.
So we have our two separate equations. And what do we get for A? And? Awesome. A is equal to -4, and A is equal to -5. All right, next one, number 6. Andrew, you want to try again?
I didn't really do it right.
Okay, so we need two factors of 2 that'll add up to -3. So two numbers that multiply and give us a positive 2, but add to -3.
1 times 2.
1 times 2, but since we're looking for a -3, both of these numbers have to be negative. So now we put them into our parentheses. So what do you think is going to go into our parentheses?
Minus
1. And?
P minus 2.
Perfect. Now we're just going to take both of these things that we have in our parentheses and make it two separate equations. So we have P minus 1 is equal to 0 and P minus 2 is equal to 0. And we just solve for P in both of those. So how do we solve for P in the first one?
Minus 1.
We'd have to add 1.
Oh, add 1.
So what do we get for P?
P is 1
P is equal to 1. And what about the second one?
plus 2.
We add 2 to both sides. And what do we get for P?
P equals
2. Perfect. Good job. Okay, let's go to number 7. Douglas, what do we do here?
We have to factor -12.
So what are our two factors of -12 going to be?
1, no. 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Which one's negative?
-3.
What's -3 plus 4?
1.
A positive 1, but we're looking for a negative 1 here. So -4 and a positive 3. So what's going to go into our parentheses now?
N plus 3. And N minus 4.
It's equal to 0. What do we do next?
We write N plus 3 equals 0 and N minus 4 equals 0. Then we add 3 and we subtract 3.
Perfect. We subtract 3 in the first one, and then we add 4 in our second. So what do we get for n?
N equals -3 and N equals 4.
Good job. All right, last one on this page, number 8. Brian, what do we do first?
Subtract 3 on both sides.
So what are our two factors of -8 going to be? What do we do with those? Perfect. N is equal to 4, and n is equal to -2. Awesome. All right, any questions on how to do these? So remember, this is 4.5. And the first thing you need to do in 4.5 is to get the right side of the equation equal to 0. So this is the first step that you need to do in this section. Base. Let's start with 11 here. We're going to solve for x by taking the square root. Curvin, what do we do first here? So in these, our goal, let's look at this one that we did. Our goal is to get n squared all by itself, so that way we can take the square root and find what n is equal to.
So you add 2. Oh, 7R2 equals 7. And then you divide. So it's going to be R2 equals 1. Square root.
Then we square root it. So what do we get for r?
1.
Just 1? What do we do in the ones above?
Oh, plus, or, I mean, add or subtract.
Plus or minus 1.
Plus or minus 1.
Good job. Remember, r can be a positive one or a negative one, so we have to include that plus or minus sign. Okay, let's look at 12. Brandon, what do we do first?
Alright, first you divide by 5 on both sides. Then you could square it.
What do we get k squared is equal to?
9.
9.
Then you square both sides. Then you'll get k is equal to plus or minus 3.
Perfect. K is equal to plus or minus 3. Brandon Torres, what do we do for this one? Just remember, our goal is to get k squared all by itself, and then we can take the square root. So how do we get x squared all by itself? Divide by negative 4. So we get x squared is equal to what? What's negative 64 divided by negative 4? 16. What do we do next? Take the square root. So what do we get for x? Just 4? Plus or minus 4. Okay, let's go to 14. Connor, what do we do here?
A equals plus or minus 0.
Is minus 0 a thing?
Oh, no.
No, so just 0. Good job. So we just take the square root, and the square root of 0 is 0. Let's go to 15. Kevin, what do we do here?
You just do the same thing as the other one.
Yep.
So you just get the square root.
So we take the square root. We get n is equal to what?
4.
Just 4? Remember, it can be positive 4, and it can be
It could be negative.
negative. So we need to have this plus or minus 4. Good job. Okay, and 16. Christina, what do we do here?
Subtract 5 and then subtract into the 15 too. You get 10x squared equals 10 and divide both of them by 10 and then do square root
So what do we get for x squared?
1 plus or negative 1.
So we take the square root, so we get plus or minus 1. Perfect. Any questions on this section? Remember, our goal here is to find our x squared is equal to whatever number, and that way we can just take the square root. So it says solve for x by taking square roots. So in order to take the square root, we have to get the x squared all by itself first. So x squared is equal to whatever number, then we just take the square root, and our answer is going to be plus or minus the square root. Okay. So we did 17, so now let's go to 18. The section's what value completes the square? What's that little formula we need to find what completes the square?
B over 2.
B over 2 squared. Perfect. And what's our B? 16 over 2 squared. What's 16 over 2? 8. And what's 8 squared? 64. So our number that completes the square here is 64. Remember, we're getting our B from this number that's next to the x all by itself. Okay, let's go to 94. It's going to go in the mean. Alyssa, what do we do here?
You take the square root.
What did we just do in the last one? What's the formula that gives us the number that completes the square? B over 2 squared. So what's our B? So the number in front of the squared is our A. The second number is going to be our B, and the third one's our C. So what's our number that goes on top here? 12. So we have 12 over 2 squared. What's 12 over 2? 6 squared. So what's 6 squared? 36. So our number that completes the square is 36. Good job. Okay, last one, 20. Gianna, what do we do?
We do 12 over 2. Then it equals 6. That's 36.
Perfect. Okay, remember the goal in this section is this formula, b over 2 squared. And the b is coming from the number in the middle. Okay, last section, solve for x by completing the square. Regulato, what do we do first here?
You have to
Add
add 2.
2. So our new equation is going to be x squared
Plus 4x and parentheses 4 over 2 squared equals 5.
Perfect. So we're doing the same thing here, and this number's coming from that equation b over 2. And we're getting our b from here. So what's 4 over 2?
2.
So we're adding a 2 squared on the left, so we need to add a 2 squared on the right. What's 2 squared? 4. So since we're adding it on the left side, we need to balance our equation and add it on the right also. So what do we do now? Perfect. X plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 3. What do we do with that? Separate. Perfect. X is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 5. Good job. Okay, let's go to 23. Andres, what do we do first here? Subtract 9. So our new equation is going to be x squared plus 10x is equal to negative 9. What's going to go in this space here?
10 over 2 squared.
10 over 2 squared. So what's 10 over 2?
5.
So we're adding a 5 squared on the left side. So what do we need to do to the right side? Add 25, because we're adding the 5 squared, so we have to add 5 squared to the right. So now what do we do? So now we do our parentheses, and we take the x from here and the 5 from here, and whatever sign this is, and put it on our parentheses. So you want to take a guess at what goes in the parentheses?
X plus 5.
X plus 5. So this is squared, and that's equal to this. So it's negative 9 plus 25.
That is
16.
And I do the square root or root root.
Perfect. So you get x plus 5 is equal to what?
4.
Just 4?
Plus or minus 4.
Plus or minus 4. Now what do we do?
You subtract 5.
So we have to make this into two separate equations since we have two numbers over here. So we have x plus 5 is equal to a positive 4 and x plus 5 is equal to a negative 4. And this is when we subtract the 5. So we get x is equal to, it's 4 minus 5, negative 1, and x is equal to negative 9. Awesome. All right, Sophia, Taggle, what do we do here? And that's equal to negative 3. So we're to this side, so we need to add 4 on the right side. So 1. Perfect. So x plus 2 is equal to positive 1, and x plus 2 is equal to negative 1. Now what do we do? So we're subtracting 2. Since it's being added, so we need to subtract it to get rid of it. So we get x is equal to? And x is equal to? Negative 3. Perfect. Okay, 25. Charlie, what do we do first? So our new equation is n squared minus 6n is equal to negative 5. And what's going to go in this space? 6 over 2 squared. So what's 6 over 2? 3 squared. So we're adding the 3 squared on the left, and we need to add the same thing on the right. What's 3 squared? 9. So what do we do now?
N squared minus 6n equals 4.
So now we do our parentheses, and we take this, this, and this, and put it in our parentheses. So what goes in our parentheses?
And I didn't do it though.
But now you can do it, right?
N squared.
We just take the n.
Oh.
So we're getting rid of the squared here and the squared here, and we're just putting it a squared on the outside. So we just take our n and we just take the 3. But what's going to go in the middle? What sign? Is it a... So we just take the minus sign. So if our equation has a minus sign, it's going to be a minus sign in our parentheses. If it had a plus sign, then it's going to be a plus sign in parentheses. So n minus, and then we take this number, but get rid of the squared. So what's it going to be?
9? Or
Just 3. Perfect. And then it's equal to, and we add these two together. So it's 4. Now what do we do?
9 squared.
Now we take the square root.
N minus 3 equals 2.
Plus or minus 2. Because we need 2 equations. So we get n minus 3 is equal to a positive 2, and n minus 3 is equal to a negative 2.
And then n equals negative 1. And then the positive.
So we're adding 3, so those will cancel out. So what's 2 plus 3?
Oh. 5.
And then we add 3 on both sides here, so these cancel out. And what do we get? 1. So n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 5. Perfect. Okay, last one, 26. Freda, what do we need to do? So for these, we need to get this to go to the other side. So we subtract 3. So we get n squared plus 6n is equal to negative 5. So 6 over 2. Because our equation's b over 2. So we put 6 over 2 squared. What's 6 over 2? So we're adding 3 squared to the left. What do we need to do on the right to keep it balanced? Add 3 squared. What's 3 squared? 9. So what's going to go in our parentheses now? So remember, we're just taking the n, but we're getting rid of the squared, and we're just taking this number, but we're getting rid of the squared. N plus 3 is equal to, and now we're going to add these two, 4. What do we do next? So n plus 3 is equal to? Plus or minus 2. So now we have our 2 equations. N plus 3 is equal to 2, and n plus 3 is equal to negative 2. Perfect. N is equal to negative 1, and n is equal to negative 5. Awesome. All right, any questions on the quiz for tomorrow?